Hello, everybody. My name's Rick McCutcheon. And today on Partner Talks, we have a returning guest, Bob McAdam. Bob, tell the people who you are for those who don't know, and what are you up to these days?
All right, Rick, thanks very much for once again inviting me to Partner Talks. I'm Bob McAdam. I am head of strategic partnerships at Denmark based Tasklet. Our U.S. offices are in Tampa, where I live. And these days, I'm working on making sure the partners in North America know about the good stuff that we're cranking out and all kinds of things related to community events. And, ever since COVID came and went, events in our space have expanded rapidly. So keeping track of them all is not easy.
So, last week we were in Montreal and
Yes.
we were at the Doug Regional event. It was a good event. There was probably, I don't know, I think 115 people there, which was great. We had it at the Microsoft offices. And it seems that every community event, the only person I see every time is Bob, right? So, we started talking because, Bob, you got a big background in community and you're a big supporter of community. And I know you're publishing a calendar now for community events. So why don't you
Yes.
talk a little bit for those who don't know your background with community?
Okay. So I helped get GPUG off the ground in 2007, a long time ago. The Great Plains User Group, which is a user group under the Dynamic Communities umbrella. I volunteered when that kicked off for a little more than 5 years, and then eventually went to work at Dynamic Communities, running their back office for a period of time, and then running GPUG for a period of time. So that was a lot of fun. Then of course COVID came and went, and that all kind of fell apart. But now Community Summit North America is the premier event in our space, and it comes up next month, and it'll be very exciting to be there. So I've been also doing a podcast with my friends Todd McDaniel and Darcy Borio. We at enterprisesoftwarepodcast.com. But we've done that for about 11 years, and Darcy and I were kind of tired, and Todd discontinued. So we got a hold of our friend Wayne Schultz, who's a Sage 100 guru, and we started up enterprisesoftwareexpress.com, a news aggregator for the Microsoft space and all the other mid-market ERPs and CRMs out there, so that people in our industry can keep track of what's going on, news wise, acquisition wise, people wise, and of course, events wise. So when I talk about events in our space, I generally go to enterprisesoftwareexpress.com and I look at the events calendar that we have there, because yours truly is the one who keeps it up to date and makes sure that we have everything on there across all the ecosystems that we know about. So it's a good reference guide.
That's great, Bob. And we're going to put that in the show notes. But we're going to focus on the Microsoft communities because if we get into everybody's communities, we're going to do a 3-hour show, and these are shorts. So first of all, let's talk about Doug, Dynamics User Group. Their big show is Dynamics Con, but I was checking out the site today, 60 regional user group meetups, along with regional events. So we were in Montreal at one of their regional events. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on at Doug.
Okay, so Doug does have those meetups all over the world, really. There's one here in Tampa Bay that is run by Mary Myers and Beth Burrell. But there are meetups all over the place, so people can come to a local event at no cost and maybe get a taste of what it's like to come to Dynamics Con in May. The regional meetups have expanded. The one in Montreal was really well done. I thought the meetup leaders there did a great job, and the attendance certainly validated that. But the regional meetups are probably happening once every other month around the country, and it's exciting to go to those because there's good sponsorship opportunities, good end user opportunities, and a great time to talk to partners. That's really what I like to do, is speak with partners at these. So hopefully we'll see some more of these regionals and they'll grow. The ones in Canada have really done well, and they've already announced one for Vancouver in March. So if the weather's nice, I might make an appearance at that one too.
Yeah, so Bob's history with GPUG, I have the history with CRMUG, and I've been organizing CRMUG in Canada since probably like 2009, right? So it's kind of a history of these these are a lot of the volunteers that I recruited over the years now running these regional events. So I've got to say that it's grown in many many ways. So Doug's a great place. They've got a lot of virtual too. So if there's not a community near you, you can start one or you can just join a virtual. So I'll put this in the show notes about Doug. But let's talk a little bit about Community Summit because they also have regional events, and I see they've got one coming up in Houston, December 9th, and another one Fort Lauderdale on December 11th. So they do a really nice regional event, and they have a lot of online materials and videos and that for customers to support community. But their big event is our summit, which is coming up very shortly. In where are we going to be? We're going to be in Orlando. So,
We're
Bob,
going to be
let's
in
talk a little bit
Orlando.
about Summit.
That's right. So we're going to be in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms, which is right next door to Walt Disney World, if you haven't been there before. Community Summit has been there a few times, 2022, 2019. I'd have to really think about all the other times it's been in Orlando, but the Gaylord's a nice property. There'll probably be 5,000 plus people there. It's the big daddy in our space, right? Going back to, the first ACSUG Summit was held in 2005. So, we're coming up on 20 years since summit gatherings became a thing. So Community Summit North America in Orlando will be a great show. There'll be lots of opportunities on the front end before the formal event kicks off. So Saturday, we've got the golf scramble that we're sponsoring. Sunday, there's a whole bunch of events. And then Monday, it starts kicking off and the expo will be open. And I love hanging around the expo Community Summit. Session topics are always good. Advanced networking opportunities at night are always good. But the expo hall is where the pulse of the event is, and I really enjoy being there. Tasklet has a big booth, and we plan to engage a lot of partners and end users and show off what we're doing. And I really like being at the expo. It's hard to walk away from it during the day.
And for partners, I've got to tell for those not familiar with community, all these community sites we're talking about, they cover F&O, they cover Business Central, they cover GP still, and for sure anything that's Dataverse related, CRM or Power Platform. So I got to tell you that, like, I get a lot of education from Microsoft being an MVP, but I get a different level of education. Like, give an example. Last week in Montreal, I'm sitting down watching another MVP show me, how they work with AI and how he writes agents, right? And, you change an agent just a little, you get a completely different answer. So, watching people with experience in these user community meetings, I think is the best education in the world.
Yeah, and given the fact that the Microsoft stack is so diverse, right? There's so many offerings. You don't have to be a big company to leverage big technology tools. You can be a small company and leverage the Power Platform with your ERP or Copilot or what have you. There's so many things that can make your business run more efficiently. So keeping on top of all of those topics is really challenging. So fortunately, we have two communities in our space to help us maintain that level of education. And it's great to get out to Community Summit North America, for example, and figure out what Microsoft's doing with Copilot and AI. Because as you know, they talk about that quite a bit. And there's a lot to be added to your ERP system to make your business, regardless of size, more efficient. So these events are great educational opportunities. I totally agree with you.
Okay. And what we also have coming up is, in the Business Central world for partners, Directions. This is
Yes.
a partner only event, but there's a Directions North America, Directions EMEA. North America's in the spring, EMEA's in the fall. Let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen in Poland.
Okay. So Directions EMEA, I was in Vienna last year for Directions EMEA, and there were 3,200 partners at that event, which is considerably higher than what showed up in Vegas for Directions North America in April. And so the Europeans have a lot of momentum. There's no doubt about it. Tasklet sent an army of like 20 people to Vienna. This year it's in Poznan, Poland, which, by the way, it's you got to get to Berlin or Warsaw as a big city to get to Poznan. I'm not super familiar with it, but it's going to be a good show. I wouldn't be surprised if James Crowder got 3,400 people at the show, maybe even 35.
And James is the president of Directions, right?
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really doing a good job with that show. It's growing rapidly. And there is a Directions Asia in the spring as well. So if you're a BC partner between Directions and Days of Knowledge and BC Tech Days, you have very few excuses not to be educated on the application. The BC training around the world is readily available to anyone who wants to get smarter on Business Central.
And the European show is probably bigger than the US show because, NAB in BC started out as a European product. And I think if we look at how many partners there are for that product, there's probably twice as many globally outside of North America than there are in North America. So that product has a global vibe about it.
It really does. And the number of partners in Denmark alone is astonishing. So they do have great momentum over there. And it's all maintained in Copenhagen. So they've got that going for them as well.
So whether you're a partner or whether you're an end user customer or you work for Microsoft, our communities are the place where things really happen, where relationships are made. If you're a partner, this is where you're going to be able to build your P2P, partner to partner relationships. If you're a customer, and I sat with a customer at lunch in Montreal, and they are still on premise with 70 stores, right? And she's trying to figure out, okay, I want to migrate to Business Central. How am I going to do this? This is where the customers are going, trying to talk to other customers about what's going on. So it's a different vibe of education, but community is where it's at. And Bob, I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks in Orlando.
All right, Rick, looking forward to seeing you down here in the beautiful state of Florida, and we will have a great time in Orlando. I will see you then.
Okay, thanks and bye for now.